Hi there, I'm Rebecca and a really warm welcome back to my channel, PumpkinBecki. In this week's video we're going to be doing the first root work on crabapple tina. Let's get started. So the glorious crabapple tina, as I teased last week in a community post, is coming in for her first root work this week. Yes, she's in full flower. Yes, it's a shame to take them off, but she did this last year and I don't want her to wear herself out doing this when I want her doing this. If that makes any sense at all. So my first job is very sadly to take off all the blooms, all of them. The time to do this is when the very first bloom fades, and as you can see we've started to get the odd one that is now losing its petals. So this is the perfect time to take the flower buds off and begin the root work. You tend to treat flowering varieties slightly differently to other deciduous trees. You want them to have flowered, lost their very first flower, not all the flowers, the first flower, and then you can go ahead and do work on them. So I'm just going to start pulling all the flowers off. Where they've got really robust stems, I'll probably use scissors just to safely take them off without damaging the rest of the bud. Right, that's done. Now it's time to get her out of the pot and start having a look at these roots properly. So the first time I looked at her, I did just take her out of the pot, take the top surface of roots down and have a look at what I had, and then put that soil underneath just to lift her back up in the pot, and then just backfill a little bit. So I've done nothing to these roots since I got her, and I'm going to have to look up when that was, because I'm not sure. So most of the soil that's in here is what she was growing in the nursery can. I didn't really do any soil replacement other than just on the very top. I did put Akadama, pumice and lava on. I'm not going to be saving any of this, it is basically compost. Crabapple seem to have quite a almost fleshy root system. So they get quite thick. But I can see she's put on a lot of fine feeder roots, so that's fantastic. And she recovered really well from the initial styling and that sort of early root look around that I did. She had as many flowers last year as she did this year, put on lots of growth, so she had a bit of a prune back. And this year, now I've taken all the flower buds off, we should be able to concentrate on actual, real, meaningful styling decisions. So it's all looking nice and positive, and there are lots of roots in here, but she's not pot bound, which is fantastic. It's going to be really great to get this sort of field soil out. And why do I keep calling her she? Well, because she's called Tina, and that's the variety of tree, not something I have called her. There's quite a little series of videos about this tree now, or ones that she's featured in, so do go and have a look at those. There'll be cards throughout this linking you to other videos. As you can see underneath there is a mesh which I popped into the bottom of the nursery can. I do that when I'm using nursery cans because it's just easier. Nursery cans often have lots of holes at different heights to help with drainage. I'm not going to cut lots of different pieces of mesh to cover all the drainage holes in a nursery can. It would be pretty impossible. So, whoop. So I use this instead. This is sort of screen door mesh to keep flies out, and you can buy sheets of it, and it's quite handy for just covering the bottom of nursery cans. It just stops all your soil components falling out through those big holes. Here's something to keep your eyes peeled for. This is a vine weevil grub. It is partway through its pupation. They do seem to really love anything grown in a pot. So, you know, you've got to keep your eyes open because they will demolish a root system quicker than you know. My blackbirds absolutely love them, but I'm afraid this one is just going to get squished. And where there's one, there's usually lots. There we go, this is a slightly younger one, and you can recognise them because they have this sort of tan brown head compared to the creamy white body. And they'll do that little curled up C to sort of protect themselves. And as I say, they will just demolish root systems, so deal with them as you will, but you definitely don't want them. They don't seem to be any sort of problem in Acadama pumice lava mixtures though. It's obviously not conducive to them. Even though it's conducive to growing great roots, they don't seem to appreciate the environment, so that's good. So putting Tina into a decent bonsai soil will stop her being attacked any further. And because I know she's got pests in here, I do actually really want to clean these roots out. I could wash them, but I'm not going to. So I had a look back at the video that I made of this tree when I did its first styling. That was in March 2021, and I had a definite two-step system going on here. They'd obviously plunged it into a pot, and we'd ended up with two almost separate root systems, and I was saying, well, you know, I could either cut it there and work from here, or I could take all these upper ones off and keep the lower root base. That is still slightly the case, because my nice fine roots are all coming from this root plane. I guess the other thing I could look to do maybe in the future is an air layer. But this here is the graft mark where Tina was grafted onto a different rootstock. So I'm not quite sure, but I know what I have got here is a bunch of really tangly roots again. So I do need to come in and try and clean these up. What I wanted to achieve in the last video was some of these big thick roots were taking really peculiar directions, so I pruned them back so that they would sort of shoot more roots out, which they have done. They haven't necessarily taken a great direction, they've kind of gone underneath the tree, but Let's start taking out the things that are definitely wrapping themselves round and are not giving us what we want from a root base. Here's that graft mark, and it comes up, around and down. Now on this side it's pretty well blended, but we have got some big cuts on this side. Also got quite a big lost branch on this side, but I don't mind that. But I do mind that graft mark. So I might have already caused myself some entertainment with where on earth the front of the tree is going to be. However, as I said, we're going to start off by looking at the roots which are definitely curling around. And in fact this one's going completely upwards. And normally when you're choosing bonsai material, you look for things that haven't got a graft. But as I say, on this side, you know, it's so well blended that I actually don't mind. I imagined this tree being a really nice sort of shohin, quite sort of stocky and chunky. So if I start sort of going too far into this root flare, I lose that. I mean, these are not pretty roots. I'm not actually sure a crabapple has pretty roots, but there you go. Oh my goodness. Okay, just do it logically. Work on the stuff that's really bent. Not growing in the direction you want it to. The nicest, finest roots are definitely coming out from here. I'm almost thinking this is a candidate for a ground layer, which is something I've not done before, but you basically recreate the root system by doing an air layer effectively, but right at the top of the existing root system. I've got a stacked root here, one immediately on top of the other. I'm going to take the top thicker one off. It's also got a gall on the roots. I'd like to take this one off because again it's stacked, but gosh, the roots behind are just so delicate. This one is definitely the more powerful root. Let me prune it back a little bit because I've got some slightly smaller because I've got some sort of slightly finer stuff coming off it. Maybe sort of in the fullness of time I can work this root back. Maybe it'll sort of push from elsewhere. I can see I've got little fine buds coming off it in other places, so maybe I just need to keep pruning and I can gradually get back to something finer. I've got some galls happening here as well. I really would like to take this root off, but I don't think I can. What I will do is remove some of the ones that are going back towards the tree and try and keep these ones that are more outward facing. It obviously doesn't have any issues with producing roots, so that's good. I mean, the bottom is nice and chunky. Oh God, I'm just going to end up with so much scarring from the old roots if I take them all off. I don't think I can grow her from these roots. but I also don't think this trunk is interesting enough for it to be the feature of the tree. If I cut all these off now, we lose a large chunk of feeder roots. But it is the time to do it if I'm going to do it. And we know she pushed out some lovely radial roots on the old cut. I think I'm going to come in at this sort of level. If I come up any higher, I lose any feeder roots that I've got. Some people will be very proud of me that I actually have a saw now, not a little X-Acto knife. So where I've got big, thick, long roots that have extended out, I am going to try and cut back to some slightly finer growth. I've got a little branch there. And this will all help to encourage the roots that I have to continue branching, continue developing, rather than just getting longer and longer. We want them to start branching closer to the tree. There is a good chance that it's going to pop out more roots across here, which it did do from the previous cutback. I can see there were more roots coming out from some bud points here on the trunk. So I think, rather than trying to do it all in one big hit, as Hella said, you don't have to take all the bad roots off at once. I am going to leave that there, because that is pretty major root reduction. I am just trying to reshape the knobs a little bit where I took, I think, probably high roots off previously, or maybe the nursery did that. Where they've calloused, they've slightly bulged up a little bit. I've just grazed the root there, so I will have to put some cut paste on that. And in fact all of these will get some cut paste. This cut paste that I put on last summer, spring summer, is still intact, so it's still doing its work. I won't try and take that off. Okay, let's get you into a pot, shall we? I've gone for a decent sized terracotta pot. We're looking at about 10 inches across the top. 1, one she was in before was probably about 12-14 inches, but obviously considerably shallower, but still enough room for roots to develop. I think I'm going to plant her a little bit low again, maybe a bit lower than before, so that maybe some of these things here have chance to put some roots out. It's worth a go, isn't it? So I prepared the pot. It has one single hole. I put some drainage mesh in the bottom, just a square of bonsai training mesh. Took a bar of really thick wire, and once the draining mesh was in and secured, I wrapped some tie-down wire around the really stout wire, pushed that through the drainage mesh and brought it up into the pot. I've already popped a little bit of Akadama pumice and lava into that pot, and we will continue filling. So I'm mounding up the Akadama pumice lava in the middle so that Tina has something to sit on, and hopefully you can see that, well, maybe she needs to be a little bit deeper than that to sort of get that accidental cut almost at surface level. I think that looks about right. And then I'm going to take the tie-down wires and twist so that they begin to secure the tree in. Okay, so that's actually pulled it down quite a bit. At the moment I've got all this on, so trying to draw and drive energy up into the tree to help the trunk thicken. Maybe in the long term what I'll be doing is, I don't know, air layering this section off, just cutting it off, who knows, and building the tree from here. That could be quite interesting. And then we can start chopsticking. Really get those soil components in and around underneath the tree. And if you've been watching any of the other repotting season videos that I've been posting, you'll know that what we're doing here is not trying to crush the soil components in amongst the roots, or indeed crush the roots themselves, but just fill up any air pockets. And you'll start to feel the chopstick bounce back at you. You're not ramming the chopstick into the soil. It's quite a fluid motion. And then suddenly it starts to not want to go in the soil anymore, and you feel the chopstick coming back up into your hand. You're just settling them in. We're also going to water the tree in. That will also help. Naughty great tit! No! It's not a smorgasbord for you, little friend. Cheeky! I've got a great tit trying to look for solitary bees to eat. I'm going to have to put some food out for it. And make sure you check all over the pot, all different angles, because sometimes you will just come across a pocket and the soil components will just flow into it and you would never have known it was there. Because that level had gone down, I have just added some more bonsai soil. I've just very quickly watered around the top there so that the soil components don't just start sucking moisture out of the tree. Right. The tree is now super stable in there, so I can come back in and offer maybe a final twist, but I think that's absolutely fine. Back and bend it down into the soil so it gets lost. Now, because that was a lot more root than I imagined taking off, I am going to come back and try and reduce the leaf mass a little bit. I'm not going to prune off the branch that's going straight up. I will take some of those bigger leaves off though. And I will take some of these big leaves off and lower down. By doing this, we are reducing the amount of water that the tree will be losing through transpiration. It's the same as when you take a cutting and you remove as much leaf matter as possible so that the tree isn't struggling to maintain the amount of growth that it's got. I'm doing the same as I come up the length of this sacrifice branch, but I'm going to leave the top few buds, there you are, well and truly alone. I want those to be as vigorous as they can be. As I say, that's what's driving the energy, thickening the trunk, pushing buds. It's that demand that that branch is making. Branch tips that I'm taking off is not so much about styling decisions right now. It's still part of that reducing the demand on the tree and its resources. There are tons and tons of buds that have pushed out from the trunk, just like this one, since its last pruning. So I'm not worried that this tree isn't strong enough to cope with this. And I think that will do her. I'm going to leave her here in the greenhouse because I don't want the drying effects of the wind making things any harder for her to recover. I'd be interested to know what you think about maybe removing the top section, making maybe 2 trees. For now, this is staying on because, as I say, it's driving the trunk growth, so I don't want to take that off too soon. Well, it's definitely an interesting prospect and one that I hadn't really considered before. Just grabbed my carving tools and some cut paste, and we will be just cleaning up the edges of these cuts that I've made. What I want is nice green cambium showing. got a nice neat edge of green cambium exposed. You have to move quite quickly because a bit like an apple, it will start to oxidise fairly quickly. So just take a small piece of the cut paste and on a damp finger we can move that out to the edges of the cut. Don't want it to overhang, so any excess I will just take away. You just want to cover that bright green cambial layer. I've also cleaned up the little scar that I made on the root there. I'm going to blend the cut paste down onto that. Anybody else? Ah yes, two around here. Just be a little bit careful when you're trying to carve away the next spot, because you could well be putting your hands into the cut paste you've just carefully applied elsewhere. Okay, last one then. There we go. That's the last bit of cut paste applied. I could probably have gone with callus mate on that, which is more liquids or rubber cement type stuff, but as I've got the cut paste out, let's carry on with that. So that's everything I wanted to do to Tina today. She's now going to get a proper watering and will stay here in the greenhouse just so she's out of the wind and can start to recover. I'm quite pleased with what we've done today. I think it's a good step forward. She's a work in progress, she's not a finished tree, and yeah, this has got her a little bit further forward. I try and upload these videos at 7 PM on a Monday, and whether that's British Summer Time or GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. So come along and join me in the live chat. I set these videos to premiere, and that means that YouTube very kindly opens a live chat and we hang out there for the length of the video and say hi and talk about all sorts of things. And I've had Jason Hanrahan, I have had Hele. I don't know if I've had Nigel Saunders in my live chat, maybe, and possibly Dave from Blue Sky Bonsai, and I think I've also had Jay from Blue Jay Bonsai in the live chat, I think, over the years. Anyway, come and join in, it's good fun. Right, that is it for this week's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to me here on YouTube, and until next time, bye.